Testing, testing, testing the microphone. Oh, good. Everything appears to be working. Just make sure that we've got this sorted out here. Good evening, everyone. I am Bad Tempered Badger. Welcome to my little discussion of my thoughts on the current Star Wars situation. Now, as some of you may have noticed, I put this as a challenge to Master Apologist on Twitter. He recently did a little thing where he challenged some people to a debate and then immediately blocked them, so they couldn't receive his challenge or respond. I thought it'd be funny to do the same. Unfortunately, he seems to have removed himself from Twitter, so what a shame. Now, on to my thoughts on Star Wars. As some of you may have, of course, heard, I'm not that big a fan of Disney as the continuation of Star Wars. I don't think they're doing a good job of it. That's not to say there's nothing to enjoy about the new Star Wars films. Absolutely not. There are plenty of things that can be enjoyed. I personally very much enjoyed Rogue One and thought it was a very good and well put together immediate prequel to A New Hope. Particularly the end. I also enjoyed Solo, although it had certain continuity issues and a few just dodgy elements that probably shouldn't have been there. I rather enjoyed it anyway. Hello there, Mr. Spooky. On the other hand, the new big feature events, the new trilogy, 2 of which is so far complete, hasn't been a particular success story-wise as far as I'm concerned. In fact, it's been something of a dismal failure, essentially killing off any interest I had in the continuation of the story of the classic characters and nearly killing my interest in the franchise as a whole. So, what could be done? Well, I think at this stage, not very much. It's rather too late to salvage those 2 films with a third one. They've already done irreparable damage to the timeline and the Star Wars franchise as a whole. However, I thought it might be nice to have a little speculation about what could have been done differently and how they could have been fixed. Hello there, Mr. Byers. I'm assuming that's how you say it. So, Star Wars. How could we take the elements that were presented to us in The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi and repair that thing so that it in some way could fit with the real expanded universe, the pre-Disney expanded universe, and be narratively respectful of the original characters and their original arcs. That's a difficult task, but I've had a little go. I've come up with script outlines for those 2 films, which I think might work. I've taken some of the characters and elements that were in them and combined them with my understanding of the expanded universe as it should be, and with the themes of Star Wars, and had a little go at putting them together. So let's have a little listen to what I've come up with, if you're interested. So, picture this. Rather than The Force Awakens, Star Wars, The Darkness Awakens. Luke Skywalker, Grand Master of the New Jedi Order, is worried. A new darkness spreads throughout the Force, a dark, twisted figure reminiscent of Emperor Palpatine, whose cackling face still haunts Luke's nightmares despite decades of deep meditation. The figure isn't Palpatine, though, but a new, unknown threat. The Imperial Remnant, rebranded as the First Order under some new, unseen leadership, is making a concerted push across the galaxy, taking many worlds from the struggling New Republic, which had partially disarmed to try to promote peace and unity throughout its territory. Luke communes with the Force. Through deep concentration, he finds the voices of Obi-Wan and Yoda and asks them about the shrouded dark figure he has seen. They warn him of another time when the vision of the Jedi was clouded, and tell him of an ancient teaching held in the first Jedi Temple, long lost, that might help him see more clearly. He begins searching, interrupted by an apprentice, Rey. I thought I'd include the characters that they'd come up with for the new films, but change them a little bit to fit better. Rey too is troubled by visions of her lost brother, Ben. Both had been rescued by Luke from slavery on the remote planet Jakku years before. Ben had gone missing a few years ago, taken by dark figures known as the Knights of Ren. They were a force that resembled the Sith of ages past. They led First Order forces against the New Republic, scattering Luke's new Jedi Order across the galaxy to combat them. Luke decided it was time to act. He had read of an old man on Jakku who might know where to find the ancient Jedi Temple. Rey asked to come too, hoping to find news of her brother. Their trip to the hangar was interrupted by Han Solo, who'd come to give Luke the latest news from Leia. Han heard about their mission and insisted that Poe Dameron, ace pilot, and his protege in the New Republic military go along to escort his old friend. After that, many of the events of The Force Awakens can take place as before. Kylo kills the old man, Poe rescues Finn. The heroes are separated, and Luke and Rey crash on the remote world of the first Jedi Temple. They both learn from the caretakers about the tree, take time to read the books, learn how to penetrate the Dark Shroud, and learn a little of Snoke, the new leader of the First Order. Meanwhile, the New Republic, aided by Finn, discover Starkiller Base and race to work out where it is and how to destroy it. Before they can, it destroys the Hosnian system, an important trade hub for the New Republic, dealing them a great setback. I have separated it from Coruscant deliberately in order to make sure that it is clear the New Republic controls the galaxy as a whole. Luke and Rey are rescued by Han and Chewie from the island and rejoin the Republic forces for their attack on Starkiller Base. The battle goes mostly as in The Force Awakens, with Luke's New Order using battle meditation to help the fleet. Luke's New Jedi Order, I should specify, using battle meditation to help the fleet, while Rey, Finn, Han, Chewie, and a small force of rebels sneak onto the planet base to disable its defenses. The party are ambushed by Kylo Ren, one of the most powerful Knights of Ren. Han is killed by Kylo, and Chewie is force-pushed off a cliff. The same push throws Rey against a tree, knocking her unconscious. Finn fights Kylo, but is quickly beaten. Rey, regaining consciousness, fights Kylo, only to discover it's her long-lost brother Ben. He defeats her, but is shot by Chewbacca, allowing her to escape. Starkiller Base is destroyed. The New Republic and First Order have both taken a big loss. Luke embraces Rey and consoles a distraught Chewbacca. The end. I think that's a much more respectful depiction of the events that could have taken place in a different version of The Force Awakens, molded to better fit the existing expanded universe, where Luke's new Jedi Order, as depicted in previous expanded universe sources, continues to exist, and he is not some miserable hermit on a remote planet trying to die in peace. Hello there, Mr. Nick von Dieserwelt. I've butchered the pronunciation of your name terribly, I'm sure. So, I'm having a little discussion of how I could repair the new Star Wars sequels, if I had a chance to make them again. So, that's my view on what could be done to fix The Force Awakens. Any comments? Please tell me. Otherwise, I shall move on to the sequel. Now, Mr. Bedhair, what do you think about a Star Wars / Doctor Who crossover? I don't think it's a good idea. I enjoy both, although my enjoyment of Doctor Who has lessened in recent years, and I stopped watching it when David Tennant disappeared, apart from a few special episodes. I don't think time travel in Star Wars would be a good idea at all. All right, let's move on to my ideas for a sequel to Star Wars The Darkness Awakens, my retelling of Star Wars The Force Awakens to better fit. Star Wars, A Jedi's Path. The New Republic's flagship is in hyperspace on its way to Naboo to boost morale among the troops. Naboo has been under constant First Order attack, being a rich world in the Outer Rim. Aboard are General Leia, Admiral Akbar, Poe, Finn, Rey, and General Holdo, along with the assorted crew members that would of course be necessary aboard the Republic's flagship. Suddenly, the ship is pulled out of hyperspace by an old interdictor cruiser and ambushed by a dreadnought. In a daring attack, Poe destroys the interdictor, allowing the ship to escape. But during the battle, their communications and hyperdrive are damaged. General Leia and Admiral Akbar are injured in the attack and are taken to sickbay while the ship escaped the dreadnought. General Holdo, a renowned field commander and tactical genius in ground engagements, takes command and orders repairs to the hyperdrive so they can get back to Republic territory. Suddenly, the dreadnought appears, having tracked them through hyperspace. A chase ensues, as, unable to jump again and running out of fuel from a leak in the previous engagement, they try to keep ahead. General Holdo comes up with a plan, and everyone follows her, amazed by her genius tactics. Poe points out a flaw, but she shouts him down and demotes him to commander for his insubordination. The plan begins. Fighters engage the First Order's TIE fighters, distracting them and drawing them away from the ship, while bombers, slow, cumbersome vehicles designed to drop payloads from orbit, are concealed behind a nearby asteroid. The plan seems to be going smoothly, but as the bombers launch their attack, they are attacked by TIE fighters and are almost all destroyed. The bombers were never designed for this kind of operation, and Holdo realizes she is out of her depth in the three-dimensional battlefield of space. She immediately calls Poe, reinstates him as captain, and gives him command of the mission. He rallies the fighters, defends the last bomber, and deals a damaging hit to the dreadnought, buying enough time to get everyone to transports and fly them down to an old hidden rebel base, which will have the communications equipment required to allow them to call for help, and enough defenses to hold out. The dreadnought fires, having repaired its main cannon. The blast causes immense damage to the interior of the Republic's flagship, and the damage to the ship's infrastructure cuts off Holdo from everyone else in their attempt to reach the escape pods, trapping her on the bridge. They tried to save her, but she tells them to leave, turning the stricken flagship broadside on, shielding the escaping transports at the cost of her own life. She dies a somewhat humbled person, but a true hero. The transports land, and everyone gets into the base. They call for help, reaching Grandmaster Luke Skywalker. He scrambles the only two available ships, the Millennium Falcon and the Tantive 10, which are several hours away. They activate the base's shield, protecting them from bombardment from orbit and forcing the First Order to engage them on the ground. Insert epic defensive battle scene here. Hello, everyone who's joined. I'm discussing how I could repair the Star Wars sequels to make sense given the original expanded universe and not make such a mess of the original characters. Where was I? Yes. Finally, when all hope seems lost, Luke, Chewbacca, and the Republic Rescue Forces arrive. Luke jumps down and joins Rey in the trenches, where she has been valiantly deflecting incoming fire with her lightsaber. A dark presence sweeps the field as a black ship lands. Kylo Ren, followed by Snoke himself, emerge. Luke tells everyone to run. The Republic's forces retreat back inside the base. Rey engages Ren and Luke Snoke. The battle is epic. Luke's force abilities are an equal but opposite match for Snoke's. They fight with the lightning, and Luke pushes. Snoke deflects, and let's start that sentence again. Snoke deflects the push, and it blows the cap off a mountain behind him. They try to enter each other's minds, and we briefly see a mass of dark shadow almost engulf a ball of light before it is forced back. In the physical world, again, the fight continues, still evenly matched, until Snoke senses a weakness. Luke's mechanical hand makes him just a little slower on that side, and he shoots his lightning there, the arcing tendrils snaking up Luke's arm and engulfing his body. Rey narrowly defeats Ren, forcing him to flee. She sees Luke in danger and calls to Chewie, who pulls her aboard the Falcon. They fly over Luke and fire the cannons at Snoke. He deflects them easily and grabs the ship with the Force. Bulkheads strain as he begins to crush the ship. Luke recovers enough to blast him with a powerful Force push and leap into the Falcon. They fly away and engage lightspeed before he can recover to grab them again. Luke is badly hurt. He tells Rey that she can defeat Snoke, but he is too powerful to face directly. Before slipping into a coma, Rey turns to Chewie and Leia, asking how she can possibly defeat such a powerful foe. Leia says, "There is great strength in you. Luke felt it. I feel it. When the time comes, you'll rise to the challenge." Chewie howls forlornly at Luke's limp form. The end. So that's how I think those two films could be salvaged in order to fit with the original expanded universe. I don't think they had any kind of plan going forward. I think J.J. Abrams came up with a vague outline for where he wanted to go, and then in the second film that was thrown out the window and made a complete mess of. I think Star Wars, as it is currently progressing, is becoming more and more divisive to the fan base, to the point that it risks going from an epic Star Wars saga to nothing but another franchise that the fans are bored with. I think it could be saved by some very... I think it could be saved by a concerted effort declaring those two films non-canon, abandoning the mess of new themes they've tried to force upon the series, and generally going back to what made the series good in the first place. I also think there should be much more of a move away from a focus on the original characters and more of a focus on the Star Wars stories aspect, focusing on smaller characters, characters who were smaller in the original trilogy, but could have compelling stories of their own. Boba Fett would be a good example, but I don't really trust Disney to handle that well. So I think it should probably be new characters, or characters who are who have so little written about them at the moment that they could be compellingly written in new ways. So what do people think? If anyone wants to join me in this stream for a little while, I'll put the link in the chat, hopefully. Hopefully that's how you do it. Thank you very much, Mr. Frustrated. If you want to drop in and have a little chat about it, then the link is open. How do I... Is that how I send someone a link to it? Just see if I can do it through Twitter as well. All right. If anyone knows how to do send the live stream link to people, because I don't think I'm doing it right. Just see if. How do I invite people to this thing? This is the part of the stream that I should have rehearsed beforehand. While we're waiting, let me entertain everyone with some music.
That indeed worked.
Excellent. There we are. Hello there, Mr. Frustrated.
Did you do what I said in the chat?
Yeah, I sent you the link through the thing.
Okay, good. What's going on, Badger?
Well, hello there, Mr. Frustrated. I thought I'd have a little discussion on Star Wars.
Yeah. I came in about at the tail end there. At first I thought you were reading a book or something, and then someone corrected me saying that you were just giving off your ideas, and I was like, oh, okay. And from what little I heard, it sounded pretty good to me.
That's the little script outline I came up with for how to repair the 2 Star Wars sequels they've done to actually fit.
Yeah. Let's face it, the first one is just... I haven't even gotten through The Last Jedi. yet.
No, I wouldn't recommend it. I'd recommend it if you want to enjoy really well done Star Wars visuals, and see a load of very dedicated artists and creators make something that looks very beautiful and like a Star Wars film, but has a storyline that's a bit of a disaster.
It's just because Disney. Just blame Disney.
Oh, I do.
Yeah, it's just Star Wars is such it's a very interesting world that Lucas created, and it's just whenever you actually get into the intricate details of actually not only just watching the films, but I mean, I personally haven't read the books, but I would love to. But once you take everything into account that is actually canon from all of that, then you can sit there and, honestly make a good film. But Disney just said, well, we're just going to kind of just do whatever we want because it's got the name Star Wars on it.
Yeah, they wanted to make it their own thing rather than carrying on what it was. My personal favorite Star Wars, my personal favorite thing within Star Wars is the Republic Commando novels, the series. And before Disney took over, there was a bit of a move in Lucasfilm to try to collate the expanded universe in order to fit with their Clone Wars series. And they made a complete mess of Mandalore, which essentially cocked up the Republic Commando series. So then when Disney took over, they consistently continued making it worse.
Of course, because, well, that's kind of what Disney is good at, making things worse. What was I going to say?
Well, my personal view on Star Wars is that it has a series of themes that it's about, and there are two ways that you can go about making additions to that. You can, one, try to make a story that fits with the established story and carries on those specific themes in a compelling way without cocking it all up. Or you can do something that's about a completely different set of characters linked to the main story, but covering whatever separate themes you want to cover.
Yeah. I will say one thing that Disney did do right was Rogue One.
I agree. I mentioned that at the start, actually. It's, out of all the new films, it's my favorite one. And
Rogue One
was definitely an enjoyable film.
Yeah.
And it doesn't cock it up.
That's exactly what I was about to say, is that and it's amazing because this was a film that, like, at the beginning, you don't really realize where this time setting is. At least I didn't. It could have been just me not paying attention until the very end, where you realize, oh my God, that's where that is coming from, and that's where that's linking. That's where this all takes place.
Yeah, I knew it was going to be between the prequels and the original A New Hope, but I didn't realize right up until sort of the end of the film how close before A New Hope it was going to be.
Yeah, and then once you realize, you're like, holy shit, that's how close. Okay.
And of course, there is that one Vader bit.
Yeah.
Which had lots of people in the cinema with me apparently orgasming in their seats.
Do what?
There were a lot of people in the cinema with me apparently just losing their marbles and having a reaching climax in their seats as they watched that scene. Because I was there like,
You're like, oh my God. You're like, these aren't the droids you're looking for.
In fact, my favorite moment of that entire scene is well, you know, Vader's hacking his way through the corridor.
Yeah.
My favorite moment of that entire scene is the guy who has seen the entire thing, pulling the lever to close the airlock, and just turning with a look of absolute terror on his face to shout to everyone else on the ship, going, "Launch!"
Yeah.
Because you're not gonna survive. You're not gonna survive an encounter with Mr. Vader. He's gonna fuck you right up.
You definitely. There is no chance of surviving. I mean, hell, this is a man who literally was on the forest moon of Endor. Was in the process of pretty much being killed in general, and then Palpatine just kind of leaves him there to die, saying that, you know, because he died, he's not what he's looking for in an underling type of thing. And Vader, with the Force alone, keeps himself from dying, beats the shit out of the Ewoks, and then gets himself to safety by sheer anger alone. I mean, Vader is not someone that you come across and just be like, oh, I can survive this fight.
There's also the there was some expanded universe thing where he was fighting some kind of recreation of Darth Maul, and they were fighting and talking back and forth as they were fighting. And Darth Maul was, you know, he was kind of dominating the fight for some of it, and says, you know, essentially you do not have powerful enough hate to defeat me. And then Vader starts, you know, bringing it back. He's like, what could you possibly hate enough to defeat me? Vader impales himself with his lightsaber to impale Maul, who is behind him, or the recreation of Maul, and says, myself.
Nah. Yeah, and I mean, if you think about it, it kind of makes sense whenever you take the, what was it, episode 3 into account, when, whenever, Obi-Wan tells him, you know, that it was because of him that Padme had died and everything, and you would realize that he does indeed, because of that alone, would indeed hate himself enough to overpower just about any other Sith that was around.
Here's the thing. This is a somewhat unpopular opinion that I've heard, but I think is quite interesting. Hayden Christensen did a very good job given the material that he was given at playing Darth Vader.
Yes, I agree.
And I think he did a very good job of playing this very conflicted individual with the lines that he was given.
Yeah. I will definitely agree with that. The lines themselves are in the movies were terrible, but he did a fantastic job with what he was given. I mean, especially when you actually watch him as he's angrily trying to still fight Obi-Wan Kenobi after Obi-Wan has chopped his hands off, and he's still groveling towards him like he wants to, with so much hatred in his eyes, he wants to kill him. I mean, that alone is enough to show you that he did a fantastic job with what he was given.
Oh, I agree. He did a very good job of subtly conveying emotion that a lot of actors struggle with. Even though, you know, when you first watch it, it kind of comes across as he's being like a whiny teenager, but he is a whiny teenager. He is a teenager through Attack of the Clones, at least. who has had the entire galaxy of responsibilities resting on his shoulder, is not allowed to show any kind of passion or love anyone, or go back to see his mother or anything like that. He has no option but to try to restrain his vast depth of conflicting emotions beneath the veneer of calm.
Mm-hmm. I mean, to have any young man who's going through, the change of his emotions in such a predicament. I mean, you're basically begging for him to eventually to go over to the dark side.
Yeah, well, they tried to make him Space Jesus. Instead, he became Space Hitler.
Yeah, exactly. And so it was like, how, oh my God, it's like, how is this? How are you going to sit there and have this boy,
especially with Windu shitting all over him at every turn?
Right? Windu did nothing but shit on him.
Hey, Master Windu, I believe the Chancellor is the Sith Lord we've been looking for. Excellent, Anakin. Now wait here, you're too shit to help us deal with this.
Right? Not only that, but I mean, if you look from episode 1, even back then, he was pretty much like, fuck no. Just no. We don't need him. And it was like, what? He's a kid. You're just gonna be like, no, just no. We don't need him in the ranks of the Jedi. No, thank you. It's like from the very get-go, you were already shitting on him.
Now I mentioned the Republic Commando series earlier, and I'm going to bring it up again because it's my favorite incarnation of Star Wars. I'm currently rereading it at the moment. It focuses on the issues of morality involved in having a clone army of essentially slaves, and it looks at how accepting the Jedi were of this situation without really thinking about it. And how, the Confederacy of Independent Systems really had a point, even though they were created through manipulations of the Sith Lord, Palpatine, in order to rise to power. The ideologies that he manipulated in order to get them to do that really had a point. They're like, well, look at this republic. It's rotten from the inside out.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at it, everybody really has a point in a lot of it, because if you, especially the dark side has a very big point. And one of them happens to be in the form that Gallus Iwan had pointed out one time. He said, if you look at it, the rebels take over at the end of episode 6.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometime in between 6 and 7, the dark side takes over yet again. They can't even keep everything situated long enough to have to not be overtaken. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, yeah, that is a point. Like, how are you going to have?
It's very poorly explained in the new sequels, which is something I tried to kind of fix in my little plot outline I came up with.
Yeah, and like I said, I caught the tail end of it, so I don't know how that is.
Let me tell you what I came up with. So, Luke is the Grand Master of the New Jedi Order, and that is as it is in the original expanded universe, rather than the new shit one. So it's an actual small organization based on Yavin, running an academy, teaching new Force-sensitive people to become Jedi. But he's changed the original sort of ideology of the Jedi a bit to try to improve it and avoid the whole mess that happened last time. Or rather, when I say he's changed it, he's more gone back to what the Jedi originally were, rather than what they became within the Old Republic.
Yeah.
So the New Republic in this timeline, which is, my kind of thing that I've linked to the original expanded universe, I've tried to make it fit somehow.
Yeah.
Is that the New Republic has united a lot of the galaxy and tried to disarm itself in some way in order to promote peace and unity throughout its territories. It's tried to, rather than having a big standing military like the Clone Army, it's tried to just allow sovereignty of the independent systems within it so that they feel that they are part of it, but also separate and independent and able to control and govern themselves.
Okay.
Whereas in the Disney shit, it basically went, they've all kind of disarmed for some reason. So there isn't.
Yeah.
It's just Leia and a few ships that. So it's basically the Rebel Alliance continued.
Damn. That's just like, it's like, how can? That's the biggest problem. Is like there are people, like especially with Star Wars, who will have a fandom that will look at these type of things and be like, where. That is fucking lazy to just sit there and say, "Oh, yeah, they kind of, just the dark side just took back over."
Like, that was another big issue between The Last Jedi and Force Awakens, the other way around. They destroyed a massive battle station that is the size of a planet. And yet the First Order is immediately all over them in the next film. So how did this massive loss to the First Order equate to in the next film, which is set almost immediately after the First Order immediately being all over them?
Yeah. Exactly. It's...
Which is why in the way I've done my little plot outlines, I've tried to do it that the First Order only got hold of the Republic ship by a surprise sneak attack rather than suddenly having massively superior forces.
Yeah, that's just like how? Because the entire
Doorknob has funding by Saudi Arabia.
I'm gonna have to call
you. Well, you say funding by Saudi Arabia, Mr. Doorknobhead, but it could be funding by Snoke. He could have been some very wealthy Outer Rim guy who could fund a private army all by himself. We just don't know because they didn't establish anything about his character in the films before they decided to cut him into pieces in the second one. So we've got no idea what's going on. It's been very poorly organized. Mr. Frustrated just had to take a phone call, so I'll continue talking at you for a few minutes. It's not well established who any of the characters are or what they're about. It could be there could be all kinds of reasons for it to make sense, but they just decided the best way to deal with that problem was not to come up with one and say, it works. They also did the whole thing with Holdo that was a fucking disaster, so I've tried to repair that in my little plot outline. So
sorry for that.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah, sorry. My wife called. I had to answer her real quick.
That's no troubles, chat. So yeah, what I was saying was, Doorknobhead says funding by Saudi Arabia for how the First Order was suddenly all over them. I said, maybe Snoke was some vastly wealthy Outer Rim guy, but they didn't say that. They never established anything about his character apart from he evil, bad force man.
Yeah, and that's the thing is just a little. Even if they want to keep what they've done so far, that's fine. But you have to add at least some kind of background. Like, for instance, like you could say that after Vader and Palpatine's death, there were still, the dark side out there. It's just you could sit there and said that it's just that Snook just so happened to have been even over Palpatine or something, just things like that.
Well, there's the galaxy. It's a galaxy. It's vast. There's planets everywhere. You could have some long forgotten Sith temple on one of them that's had some guy that's had some little society of Sith that's been cut off from the rest of the galaxy for thousands of years. You could come up with any kind of little thing for it. Like in the Jedi Knight games, in Mysteries of the Sith, there is the ancient Sith planet of Dromund Kaas. It's got ancient destroyed Sith temples there. When you go there in the game, none of your weapons apart from your lightsaber work because the planet is so soggy. It's like a big swamp planet, and just the water gets in everything apart from your lightsaber.
Yeah.
And that gives the whole place this atmosphere of being overcast and permeated with dark energy. They could have done anything like that, but they just decided the best solution to we don't have an explanation for how Snoke is this big guy, so we just won't explain it. We'll just leave it there.
That's exactly what happens too. Is they just like someone's like, so yeah, we've seen the movie. The new big bad is Snoke. Where exactly did he come from? And they're like, he's there.
Yeah, he just showed up.
He's there. That's all. Just he's there. It's like, oh well. Are you sure there's like no other? You don't have a background for him. He's there.
It's perfectly possible to just say he's there, and then later on come up with a compelling background for him. But that's not what they did. What they did was they made some bullshit character, and then went, look, here's this big bad character. We're going to kill him off now without ever coming up with any story for him. It was just a massive wasted opportunity. Oh, he's off again. So let's see what we got. The whole Jar Jar Binks Sith story is a very interesting angle, Mr. Doorknob. There's a lot of speculation that was the original intent of the character, and then he was so unpopular that they just rewrote that. I don't know whether that's true or not, but I think it's quite a compelling argument. I think Jar Jar being the ultimate Sith Lord would have been quite a controversial decision, but could have worked if they did it right. I'm not sure they would have been able to do it right, given how a lot of the dialogue and stuff happened in the prequel trilogy. I'm not saying the prequel trilogy is a bad trilogy. It's very enjoyable, as long as you can get over the dialogue issues. The story it sets up for the expanded universe is excellent. It's just not that great in terms of certain aspects of it as it's presented in film, particularly the overuse of CGI, which is one of the things I will credit the new films for. They use a lot of CGI, but it's blended in a lot better with the practical effects, and there are a lot more practical effects in it. That's one of the few things I will praise the new trilogy for. Well, trilogy, there's only 2 of them so far, but they've at least done something with practical effects. Let's see. Oh, that's something else. How they've done lightsaber combat in the new trilogy is really quite good. They've really really emphasized the level of power that exists within these energy swords that will essentially cut through almost any material. They've really shown them a lot more respect as a weapon than happened in the prequel trilogy, where you see them swinging them around like it's nothing. Ooh, pretty lights. Yeah, exactly. And they didn't need such an over-reliance on CGI to make everything look nice. They could have just done much smaller environments with slightly less open view of it all, and it would have worked just as well, if not considerably better. And then had CG for background shots and wide shots, but focused on having actual sets and practical props and effects for the actors at close up. Particularly the clone troopers. They could have done with people in actual suits of armor rather than CGIing them all because it looked shit. It looked like Obi-Wan was talking to a bunch of PS2 characters. Anyway, read the Republic Commando books. They are excellent, and they give you a much closer and personal feel for the clone army as a whole and the commandos within it. They're released alongside the Republic Commando game, which is an excellent game, apart from the multiplayer that's a bit shit. I also recommend the Republic. I also recommend the Star Wars Battlefront games, the proper original ones, not the new EA shit. Anyone got any questions while we're waiting for Mr. Frustrated to come back? Oh, it's possible. I'm not sure what he's up to. He might be back in a few minutes. So, what did the people in the chat think of my little story outline? Anyone? Yeah, if anyone's got any thoughts they want to put to me vocally, poke me on Twitter or something, and we can arrange to have a quick chat. Oh, he's back! He's back! What's he got?
I am back. Sorry about that.
That's all right. What's the situation?
Well, the one of our horses is not wanting to act right. He yeah, he's kind of been sore and whatnot lately. So we have a horse masseuse coming out.
Horse masseuse. A horse.
A what?
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, so she's coming out there to massage and show my wife the massaging techniques, and
I see.
But she actually had to. It was pushed back because it was supposed to happen 10 my time, which was 2 hours ago.
Oh.
And we didn't know why. You know, she was late, and turns out she didn't save my number whenever I called her. So she was like, "I'm sorry, you know, we had an emergency colic," which, if you're not familiar with horses, colicking is when,
Not hugely familiar with horses.
So colicking is whenever they, when something is happening internally with them, they, for instance, you can always figure out signs. They'll stop pooping.
Oh dear.
They won't drink, and they will roll around on the ground a lot. And it's kind of like their stomach being twisted in knots type of thing. And so she had an emergency colic that she had to go and take care of.
Yeah.
And so,
so that slowed things down for the other thing.
Yeah, and so,
but didn't get to let you know.
Yeah, and so now she's finally on her way because the vet came to take care of the problem.
Well, something at least.
Yeah.
Right. So, what were we on about?
We're on about how Snook was pretty much just there, and that was the only.
He was just there.
Yep, just there.
But, I think they could have gone in all sorts of different directions with that character, and that's what I kind of tried to do in my plot outline. Is that he's this kind of well, he's the Phantom Menace, as he were. He's this shadowy figure off in the distance that nobody knows anything about, and he's, in my plot outline, survives the second film, so would be able to come back as a threat in the third one. And in fact, he'd be a greater threat in the third one because Luke, the only Jedi of equal ability to him, is incapacitated.
Yeah, and so that would definitely put him at a big advantage. And then, of course, either that leads Rey to actually untapping her biggest abilities, or have at the last minute have freaking Luke come back and help destroy him once and for all.
Mm-hmm. Well, that'd be nice.
Yeah. But Disney, they already messed it up. They're just gonna keep digging that hole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're trying to push this whole new continuity after the sequels, and it doesn't work. It doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
And they shouldn't be doing it.
Mm-hmm.
What they should be doing is either doing something that fits with the original expanded universe, or setting their new films in an entirely new time period or place within the Star Wars universe that can link to the previous events, either in the form of some historical angle that contributes to the build up to those events, or in the after the events, some link to something from the original films, and go, hey, look at this. This thing's in the originals, and now we're using it in these, but it's in a new way.
Yeah. And the thing is what really gets me is the fact that Disney has bought out these movies just because of the cash cow that they can be, and that they will continue to be.
Mm-hmm.
But they're slowly bleeding this dry whenever they can turn it around and make it work so well in their favor.
No, they could, but they're not gonna.
No, they're not going to. But
I'm worried at the moment, particularly because they're doing a series called The Mandalorian.
Oh no!
And that's something from the Republic Commando novels, particularly again, that I'm particularly. That's a part of Star Wars that is particularly close to me. I read those books and did a lot of stuff to do with the Mandalorians when I was growing up. It's a very sort of integral part of my mind and my relationship with the Star Wars story. So if they cock it up, that's them done. That's Star Wars done for, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. And the thing is it pisses me off because if Disney wanted to truly just get their hands on the money of this, what could have been done is they could have bought out the rights for it.
Mm-hmm.
But said, you know what? Just do it the way you need to do it. And, these movies could have been a whole hell of a lot better. Or if they wanted to get a whole new group of people in, get people who are fans of the Star Wars universe. Get people who have, like you, who've watched the movies, read the books, played the games, did all these different things that revolve around Star Wars, and be like, you know what, y'all write a fantastic script to save this franchise, and have it go on just a little bit further, just that way we can set up, all these different things, and they would be so better off for it. But like I said, Disney is the type of people that, it's like you sit there and they're the kid that, you hand something to them and you explain to them, you hand a kid $5 and explain to them, if you keep this, you can you can save it, and then more money you get, you can add up and blah 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 blah. And this kid yelled, "YOLO, buying all the candy I can." That's exactly what Disney is doing with this. Is they pretty much yelled, "YOLO, let's dive bomb this shit."
Mm-hmm. They're just making a complete mess of it while they can, and then they'll run it into the ground, and then Star Wars will be essentially dead for probably another decade.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, for instance, I don't remember if it's Disney who did it, but like with what happened with the Air Bud movies, if you ever watched those, about the basketball playing dog. And
I've heard of them, I haven't watched them.
Yeah, and then they just, like I said, I want to say it's Disney who did it. I don't remember, but whoever did do those films just ran it into the ground, because it went from Air Bud playing basketball to playing football, which is not that too big of a deal. But then it goes on to puppies and all of their stuff, and then the dogs are talking, and they just, once it gets ran into the ground, it stays there and it's just going to become just kind of a parody of what it once was.
Yep.
Really.
And as well as that, it's already happening with the Avengers. Like that was a big thing. They managed to create this entire connected cinematic universe out of the Avengers and the Marvel comics, and they're now running that into the ground.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, seriously, if they do not stop with the second part of Infinity Wars, if they don't just stop with the Avenger movies, like, I don't care if you keep on going on with, these separate characters movies, like, you can sit there and go on to have Iron Man 50 if you would like. I don't care. But if they don't stop with the Avengers part of it, everything's going to just fall apart.
Well, the problem that they have now is because they've done a whole linked universe thing, is they've got Avengers fatigue. So I haven't watched any of them since Iron Man 2. In fact, no, I watched the first Iron Man. I didn't watch the second one. I watched the third one. I've seen one of the Avengers films, and I don't want to watch any more of it, because I feel like I have to watch all of them to have enough idea of what's going on to continue.
Yeah.
I don't care enough about any of these characters to want to invest that much time in it.
Right. And the thing is with the Infinity Wars, the only thing that they have gotten right is also throwing in, from the actual comics, what happened, which is throwing in everybody, including Guardians of the Galaxy, and having everyone come in for this is the only thing that they've done right with Infinity Wars, as far as I can tell. I haven't watched it all yet, but I do plan on it soon.
No, and all I've heard about it is they kill off a load of major characters.
Oh, yeah.
And essentially make it so that a load of people aren't going to be interested in watching anymore because their favorite character's dead.
Yeah. And the only thing that I know is what they showed in part of the movie, because, like I said, I didn't watch it all. I came in at one part that kind of ruined it for me already. And I was like, I don't. I have to figure out what happened exactly in context.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason I stopped watching Game of Thrones.
Oh, yeah?
And it's because they killed off all the characters I cared about. I mean, that they did that in two ways. One, they just killed them, killed them dead. Mm. And two, they killed them in a narrative sense and made them no longer interesting to me.
Mm. Yeah, one of the things that got me about Game of Thrones was because, you get so used to this, to the way this narrative plays out. The good guy sits there and figures out that the bad guys, did this, calls them out. The bad guy gets the good guy, in trouble or in prison somehow. And then eventually the good guy gets out and takes over, and, it's all happy-go-lucky at the end.
Mm-hmm.
But then then you have Game of Thrones, where it plays out for that first part, but then throws a monkey just flings its own feces at it and screws everything up, because what happens is you're expecting, Ned Stark is gonna live, he's gonna be okay, and then the next thing you see, his head is on a pike, and you're like,
it gets worse and worse and worse as it goes.
It's like, I'm sorry, what? That's not at all how this narrative is supposed to go.
See,
what did you do this for?
I don't mind them subverting the narrative like that, but they've gone too much with. I mean, I know it follows the books. The books may be very good books and very well written and so on and so forth. However, they don't translate so well to TV. And not just that, they let me give you an example. Are you worried about spoilers? Is anyone in the chat worried about spoilers? Game of Thrones, I'm on about. Given that I'm now about 3 seasons behind because I stopped watching it, I don't think anybody's going to be concerned about the spoilers I have to offer.
Probably not.
So, they killed off the Prince of Dawn, the guy with the guy with the spear and the fun accent.
Mm-hmm.
They killed him off in a very gruesome way, which I was not happy about at all.
Crushing of his head?
Oh, yeah, but it was the eye bit before that I don't like.
Yeah.
And I was there like, this guy's going to be an interesting character. He's gonna be a recurring character. He's interesting. He's clearly not a good character in the classic sense. He's not. I'll do the good thing because it's the right thing to do. He's got his own agenda and his own interests, and he's a complex and interesting character. He's an anti-hero, as in that he's not a good character, but he's doing something that is for the good of the main characters in this instance. They just killed him off, and I was like, oh, well, there goes any interest in that plot line.
Right. Well, one of the did the chat ever answer about the spoilers?
I'm all seasons behind and still don't care, and never watched Game of Thrones and have no memory.
Okay, so there's one thing that is pretty awesome, because you're probably by then aware that the Stark children, for the most part, are all separated.
Yep.
Arya
going through their own various traumas.
Yeah, Arya is being pretty much pretending to be a boy, so that way she can she's not she can then just, even if it is forced labor, she won't be, found out to be a Stark.
Yeah, that was interesting. That was something that I was enjoying, the dynamic of that.
Yeah, and then you have of course, Jon Snow being up on the wall.
Yeah.
Going beyond the wall to and whatnot. You have their brother, the oldest brother, who was becoming king of the North, but then by then you should already know that he's probably dead too. But then you have the young boy who gets whisked away by Hodor, and
yeah,
so
they're off in the middle of nowhere somewhere.
yeah, and so all these people are just scattered out, and
Bran Flake Stark, that's his name.
Huh?
Bran Flake.
Bran Flake. Well, Bran, he's you find out later that he becomes this pretty much the seer. He can see into the future type of thing.
Yeah, he starts doing the warging, doesn't he?
Do what?
But it does some animal shit.
Yeah, and then you have Arya, who then becomes she then goes under the wing of a man who is known as the Many-Faced God.
Yeah.
So you caught up to that part?
A bit. I saw kind of the start of that, and I was there going, okay, that's another one of the characters I was interested in a load of magic bullshit that I don't give a shit about.
Well, I mean, this is a fantasy world. There's going to be
it's a fantasy world, but
there's going to be a lot of magic shit that you're not going to give.
There's a level of magic shit that I like, and that's where I can understand what the fuck's going on. And when you get beyond that, I'm just there going, okay, so there's a load of shit, the stakes of which I don't understand, and the dangers of which I don't comprehend. So I'm not engaged in this.
Yeah. Well, dude who ran the brothel, you know who I'm talking about, right?
I think so, yeah. She kills him, doesn't she?
Huh?
She kills him, doesn't she? Is that the guy?
Well, no, it's not that she kills him. Well, she does kill him, but it's the way that all that plays out. Because you already know that he is conniving, and he will say and do whatever to make sure that he lives.
Mm-hmm.
So, he then tries to turn the two sisters against each other. But because they're both darks, they pretty much are like, fuck that. And he gets charged with,
that brothel guy. I'm with you now.
Yeah. And he then gets charged with all of it. With, the pretty much trying to get them to turn on each other. Mm-hmm. And Arya does, in fact, kill him.
That's apples, mate.
Do what?
Nothing.
But it's so funny because this entire time, right up until this point, he just thinks that he's just the cleverest thing. Mm-hmm. And then once they sat there and said, "We knew your plan," and then laid out his plan all in front of him, you just see the look in his face like, oh fuck, shit. I am actually fucked now.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just, the scene playing out was amazing. And of course, Jon Snow.
See, that kind of thing interests me.
Huh?
That kind of thing interests me and makes me think I might continue, go back on and try to get back into it. Problem is, they've done so many things around that just make me go, oh, that I'm not sure I'd be able to.
Trust me, there's a lot of stuff that you go ugh to in the beginning, but as the storylines play out, you get to the point where you're like, okay, I'm getting kind of interested. I'm getting interested again, and then you're at the point where you're like, oh my god, why haven't he come out with a new season yet? And so, for instance, you figure out why the guy. Oh, sorry. Just saying that for instance, you also figure out why Hodor can only say Hodor.
Interesting.
Yes.
Now, I'm a big fan of a hard magic system, as in I like the rules of the magic system within a world to be clearly defined, and I like the world to not break those rules.
Mm-hmm.
I like Lord of the Rings, but I'm not a fan of how magic works in Lord of the Rings.
What about the way the magic works in, say, Aragon? Did you ever read that series?
I haven't read that.
Okay, in that series, The way magic works is not everyone can control it. For starters, you can't just say a magical spell and then be able to do it.
Yeah.
You actually have to, like for instance, the ones who usually do the magic are the elves, the the dragon riders, and there are some spellcaster type of people, but not everyone can or does do it. But with the magic, it does have a cost. For instance, the more powerful or longer lasting the spell is, the more energy it drains from you, and you can actually die if the spell is way too powerful, or the duration is way too long. So, for instance, there's one spell he does with his sword. Because he has a special made sword that's made from the metal that's under a tree in the elven capital. That is the spell is called Brissinger, and what you do with Brissinger is it produces fire out of nowhere, because of course magic. But it's drain. But so as soon as he takes out his sword and says Brissinger, automatically his sword catches fire. He doesn't even have to say it in a certain way. He doesn't have to say whatever, just because the metal itself is imbued with a type of magic that then as soon as he says it, he could just be saying it, just conversationally, and it'll spark up.
So it'll do the thing, yeah.
Yeah. And so with every bit of magic you use, it comes at the cost of pretty much more or less your life source. And
does that regenerate over time, or is that something that once you have a finite amount and that's it?
Yeah, no, you can regenerate it over time. It's just like it. For instance, if there's a lot of time throughout the second novel, I want to say it was, he spends a lot of time pretty much being unconscious because he used a too powerful of a spell.
He did a big thing. It was too much for him.
Yeah.
All right.
And so he would be like out for like a week.
Well, let me bring this back to Star Wars a little bit. So this is Star Wars with the Jedi in terms of a magic system, because the Force, it's kind of science fiction, but it's also not. It's a science. It's space fantasy essentially.
Yeah.
Now, there are science elements in it, and I'm particularly into those and that aspect of it more than I'm into the fantasy side of it. However, the Jedi, as they're typically depicted with very specific and definable abilities, are the kind of magic system I like in a story. I like them. I like the power they have to be essentially understood, but with a bit of wiggle room. So you're not going to see, apart from in some of the expanded universe, which I think went a little bit wonky, you're not going to see a Jedi you're reaching out and crushing a planet with his hand or doing anything too ridiculous. Their powers are contained within certain limitations. However, they have abilities which are supernatural and a little undefined to allow some wiggle room for narrative purposes in what they can do.
Well, the thing is if you think about it, it's not exactly even supernatural, because the powers that they control is just the elements sort of around.
I know where you're coming from there. It's part of the universe that they exist within.
Yeah.
Another example of the kind of magic system I like would be Avatar, as in the airbender kind, not the blue cat people kind. That series has a magic system which is very tightly controlled in terms of what is allowed and what isn't. If you are an earthbender, you can bend earth. If you are an
Right.
airbender, you can control air, and you have to train and do very specific movements in order to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And there is an element of ambiguity in it, as in what the upper limits of what any particular person is capable of, particularly the avatar. But
Mm-hmm.
the basic level of understanding is always the same, and they stick within it.
Right. Whenever you talk about the when you went to Game of Thrones and we were talking about when I brought up the
Mm-hmm.
many-faced god thing, what
Yeah.
elements of magic are there?
That's the thing. I've got no fucking idea. I don't know what is going on with that.
Okay, well,
they can do the faces thing. I know they can do that, but
the faces thing, you know what that is, right?
Before you go into that,
Okay.
as far as I got into the series, was Arya was doing the faces thing. She was going into that hall with all the faces, taking a face, putting it on her face, going and doing something, and then going and putting it back. They never in the series, as I recall, showed her learning to do that. They just said, here are faces, and then in the next episode she was like, I'm doing the faces now.
Well, the thing is throughout that entire part. So if you've gotten that far, as you know, the faces are the faces of the people they've killed.
Oh yeah, I kind of got that, although it wasn't explicitly stated up to the point I got.
So all this was pretty much taking these faces, putting them on, and this isn't magic. It's just being able to, what's the word? Is be able to take on the mannerisms and the voice of each person, which
kind of inhabiting really their essence, as it were.
Yeah, it really doesn't take magic to do that. You just have to be able to control your voice very well. It's hard, and so in that aspect, you would think that you can't, like for instance, a young woman such as Arya cannot take the face of a man and become a man and speak like a man could because of the voice limit. I don't know if in this because of course this also is a fantasy world, so this is their own world. So I don't know what the limits are.
Whatever limitations they want on it in theory. Yeah.
But let's just say that it is. So whenever they end that season, she's back in Westeros, and she kills the same man who killed her brother, but she did it under the guise of another female, if I'm not mistaken. And
I haven't got that far, so I'd need to catch up.
Yeah. So it was it's not magic for that. It's just being able to understand the mannerisms of the people you are about to take. That's all that is.
So it's advanced fantasy makeup.
Pretty much. There is actual magic within this world because you have the Red Witch. So there's magic. And she does bring somebody back from the dead.
Here's as far as I got. I'll tell you the last thing I saw was Jon Snow having been stabbed. I am aware of what happens afterwards, but I haven't seen it.
What happens afterwards is amazing because, as you're aware of,
I'm aware, sort of.
Okay. So I'm gonna guess you're okay with spoiling.
I'm not too worried at this point. I've left it long enough that and lost enough interest that I'm not too bothered.
So, pretty much what happens is the entire Night's Watch stab him, as you know.
That's the bit I saw.
They thought it was for the best of the Watch, and you got as much because every time you stabbed him, they always said for the Watch.
Oh, that was just a quick aside. A group of people I used to do sword fighting with, we would keep sneaking up on each other with this little polypropylene practice knife, and stab at each other with it, going for the watch.
I love that. That's amazing. Oh my god. Well, so you know they did that. They stabbed him, and he was dead, like literally dead for like a day or
like dead as fuck.
Yeah, like they left him in the yard, and so they the Red Witch just happens to come to the wall.
Oh, this dead boy. Yeah.
And she brings him back to life. And of course, you know, I'm like you said, I love magic that has rules to it. Like for instance, I love it whenever people, you know, when you have a story that says, "Oh, you can bring people back from the dead, but it costs a life for a life," or you know, "Oh yeah, you can bring like people." That. Yeah, or or like the only time, I don't know, just something that has rules to it is always nice, because then it's like, oh, okay, so you can't just do whatever the fuck you want to willy nilly. Got it. But that's the only bit of issue that I take place with this magic, because she was able to just bring him back to life. It does.
Well, there was some talk with that other guy, you know, Dondarrion or whatever his name was, that every time it happened, he lost something in the process.
Yeah.
But that's slightly nebulous limit on it. That.
Yeah.
That's right on the edge of what I could handle.
Yeah, and so he comes back to life, and pretty much kills somebody. Kills the person, I think, who originally set up everything.
Yeah.
To have him killed, and he was going to leave the wall and go back home, and someone was like, "Oh, but you know, can't you why no you have to stay, you know, because you made it, you know, you signed up for the
oath specified till death, didn't it?"
Yeah, he sits there and goes, and he looks at them and says, "I died. I already served my time," and walked away. And so I was like, "Oh my god, that's badass!"
Just like, fuck yourself.
Yeah, pretty much. It was the best Jon Snow way of saying, "Go fuck yourself, guy." And so that made me absolutely love that part, was because he's like, "I already served my term."
Okay, like, here's the thing. Game of Thrones, I'm particularly into, when I was watching it, the bits I was particularly into were the fight scenes where they really had a focus on realism that a lot of other fantasy things just don't have.
Yeah.
Like, for example, the Hound fighting Brienne of Tarth. That was one of my favorite things because of how dark the fight got in terms of just the themes and what was going on in it.
Yeah.
You know, it went from a nice polite sword engagement to, I'm going to beat you to death with this rock until you fall off that cliff and break every bone in your body.
And the thing is in a fight, especially if one side is there to fight for, you know, they have a really good cause to fight. You're not going to have just this poetic, pretty looking fight of flashing swords all the time. Someone's going to get desperate. Someone is going to do things that aren't necessarily chivalrous. And so people's idea of this whole entire, you know, oh, this is fantasy, you know, they shouldn't do things like that. It's like, no, this is realism. This is, for instance, if I am put in a cage and told that the only way that my loved ones will live is if I kill this person, you best believe I don't give a shit. I'm going to kick them in the balls. I'm going to sit there and take that rock and beat the ever-loving shit out of them just to make sure that my loved ones survive. This is
bringing it around. Bring it around to Star Wars. I keep bringing this up because I'm rereading them at the moment, and they're my favorite Star Wars series, the book series, the Republic Commando books. Read them; they're excellent. There's a lot of that, just that element of it from the perspective of an elite commando squad in this book series. In the first book, it deals with a Jedi who has never really faced the reality of killing someone with a lightsaber before.
Mm-hmm.
And the first time she kills someone with a lightsaber, it is someone who didn't know she was there. I mean, they knew she was nearby, but not exactly where she was. She went round a corner and just brought the lightsaber down from a raised position without really comprehending what that meant.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next bit of the book is she's standing there over this essentially cut in half corpse of this body, just going, "Oh shit, I did not think about this."
Yeah. And it's these stages of realism that I absolutely love. Like, you'll have the storyline of people who, are in training to, fight people and kill people.
Mm-hmm.
And they just think it's all great and handy and all good and dandy until the actual moment comes where it's time to put that training to use. And they're like, oh, what? Or, they get thrown in a situation that isn't what they ever trained for. But so they have to adapt to it. And they're like, this wasn't covered in training. And these moments of realism is what I love about stories.
It's a very emotional book series for me, precisely for that reason, and from the extension of that reason, which is the Clone Commandos. Have you ever played the Republic Commando game?
No, I haven't played any of the games or read any of the books.
All right. The Republic Commando game is it follows Delta Squad, which is a squad of Republic Commandos made up of 4 clone commandos. All the Republic Commando squads are made up in the same way. They are 4 clone commandos who have been raised together from the time they were cloned. They don't know anyone else anywhere near as close as they know their 4 squad brothers. Omega Squad, which is the squad focused on in the Republic Commando books, is made up of 4 clone commandos who, on their first military deployment on Geonosis, which would be the first engagement of the Clone War in Attack of the Clones, each member of this 4-man squad lost everyone in their original squad in their first engagement.
Oh wow!
So the mission that is the first mission they do as a squad together, which is the focus of the first book of the series, they do within a day of meeting each other.
Wow.
After having been a member of a 4-man, essentially a family, for the entire 10 years of their artificially shortened clone lives.
Yeah.
So it's an emotional book series.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I had such high hopes when I saw the first Star Wars of the new series. Whenever you have the clone trooper and he takes his helmet off and he's like, freaking out. I'm like, oh my god, this is a little.
They're going to go somewhere interesting with this.
Yeah, and I mean, in a way, they kind of did, but then they just shit all over it, and I was like, why?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, really? That's the direction you're going to go with it.
I'll tell you. I recommend reading the Republic Commando series, but I'll tell you a few quick little things from it. It involves a clone commando falling in love with a Jedi.
Of course, I love a good love story.
Yeah, it's what I would call a good love story. Some people have issues with it, but I enjoyed it very much. There's it involves a lot of Mandalorians because Jango Fett, Mandalorian guy, he was the clone template for the clone army. Also, he hired a lot of Mandalorians that he had worked with in the past to be the training sergeants for the clone commandos.
Uh-huh.
A lot of them ended up as sort of father figures for their commando unit, for their commando groups.
Mm-hmm.
And it focuses 3 of the 4 commandos in Omega Squad come from the same commando batch trained by the same sergeant.
Yeah.
So they have that at least as common ground to start with.
Good.
Yeah, that guy features in the later books as a very important character and a father figure for a lot of the characters.
Yeah. That does sound like a pretty good story.
Brantley says this chat is lonely and BB-8 is the best droid.
Has he not ever seen R2-D2?
Also, he loves the Porg, and he says that bad-tempered Badger should get a dachshund dog so that he can become good-tempered Badger.
My veteran should be a dachshund. Tempered. Well, he does have a point because dogs are just amazing.
Dogs are good boys.
Yeah, they're good doggos.
Oh, there's kind of a dog in the Republic Commando books.
Oh, is there?
It's not a dog. It's a Mandalorian hunting strill, but it's a little bit like a dog.
Oh, okay. I just got a notification saying that Oxhorn was on playing Fallout 76.
Oh, I haven't watched him for a while.
Yeah, I gotta say there's one thing I have to say about Oxhorn.
Mm-hmm.
He has the fucking most perfect voice for this type of stuff.
Yeah.
He's like, in the last episode, we did this and whatnot and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, Oxhorn, if there's one thing I want from you, it's your fucking voice, because it's amazing.
Just try to do a collaboration with him. I'm not sure if he's into your general line of subject matter, but
All right. Just Oxhorn, look, I want you to collab with me, but just because I need your voice for something.
Yeah. Just don't pay attention to what you're saying. Just read the lines.
Yeah, just don't think about it. Just read the lines and you'll be good. But no, I am starting a gaming channel, so I will.
Oh yeah, Pig Arse Gaming.
Maybe one day. Huh? Yeah. And so maybe one day. Maybe one day he'll want to do some kind of collab.
I do like some gaming YouTube stuff, but it's not connected to this to my talking about stuff channel at all.
Yeah, no. My like I said, my channel is not going to be connected with this. I don't get on my gaming channel. I don't care what faith you come from. If you want to watch. If you don't.
Yeah, my gaming stuff. I don't do it under the same kind of personality, not personality. I don't do it with the same identity. If you know what I mean. That's more closely linked to my IRL self. Anyway, on the subject of Star Wars, there, what do you think of this business that EA is now essentially running all the Star Wars games? That they are the company that has been licensed after LucasArts gaming division was disbanded. They are the company that has now been licensed to make all Star Wars games going forwards.
Repeat that one more time.
EA, they're making all the Star Wars games from now on.
That could be both. That could either be good or bad. EA is really a hit and miss with games.
Going from what they've done so far, I'm saying it's bad.
Yeah. Like I said, they get these moments of brilliance, and then they have a long strip of just terrible things, and it's just.
My issue with them is they always bring in the microtransactions and the bullshit, basically. And my view on gaming is, if I paid for a game, I paid for everything in that game.
Right. Yeah, I understand. I really don't like microtransactions myself. I think that if you're going to do something, what should happen is the in-game currency you use just have other ways of being able to get it, like such as hell, even if you want to have get someone to work a job or whatever to get.
I don't in theory mind you being able to buy things that you can get through other methods in the game, as long as the other methods are reasonable and well balanced without ever having to spend additional money on it.
Right.
If your game is free to play, then have stuff you can buy in it. You have microtransactions all you want. You've earned it by making a game that's free to play.
Mm-hmm.
If your game is not free to play, if I'm paying for it, I've paid for every item of content within it.
Yeah. So if I buy, like, say, Fallout 76, because they also do the microtransactions within Fallout 76. So if I pay for a game, I don't want to have to pay for every little thing. Especially those who it's like, oh, you got to pay to buy this game. Oh, guess what? You also have to pay to level up, type of thing. And I'm just like, there's quite a few of us who don't have the funds to just sit there and drop on a $75 game and then go and drop like $5-10 here and there to level up every now and then. No, we don't. And the thing is we shouldn't have to. You should just be able to be like, oh, well, here's a way to get in-game currency. You can sit there and go and do odd jobs for the NPCs and whatnot. Like, go kill this horde of horde of monsters, or go do this, go do that. But it just really irritates me.
Brantley says, I don't think you should be able to get through to be able to play or get through a game without microtransactions, to which I replied, you want to get stabbed?
Yeah. Oh, Brantley, he's hilarious. I think gaming should be for the upper class.
Same with education.
This is why I love Brantley. I get his sense of humor.
He's a fun boy.
You know how many people would have sat there and read that and thought that he was 100% serious and be like, I'll tell you.
You can't take it. Do you really think that someone would do that on the internet? Just go on the internet and tell lies?
I read a quote once that said that everything on the internet is true. And that quote came from Abraham Lincoln. And Abe Lincoln could not tell a lie. That's why his name was Honest Abe.
Do not believe everything you read on the internet. Britney Spears.
Yes. Oh, Lori.
Anyway, Star Wars. What were we on about? Gaming. Star Wars gaming. Republic Commando. Play the Republic Commando game.
Okay.
But yeah, it's really innovative game time with squad-based combat. As you're going through somewhere, you can command your squad mates to. This is single player I'm talking about. The multiplayer is a bit of a mess. You can command your squad mates to take up position, to do specific things. You can tell them to take defensive or offensive formation. You can tell them to do door breaching maneuvers, to take up sniper position there, plant explosives there, do all sorts of context sensitive things. And it's a very interesting game. What you shouldn't do is play it for 24 hours straight.
No,
because
I would say that's true about just about any kind of game. Is play it for 24 hours straight, you lose out on vital sleep.
Yeah, because I did that. I was really into it. I was really into a particular level of it, and then I tried to sleep afterwards, and I was just laying in my bed in a state of semi-consciousness, with every time I closed my eyes, Republic commandos and Trandoshan mercenaries ducking in and out of cover and shooting at each other.
I worked at Walmart for so long that I would dream that I was working.
Oh, I had that experience in retail once.
Yeah, it was great because in my dreams, all I could hear was, "Hi, welcome to Walmart," and I was like, "What the fuck is this?"
I had I once woke up from a nightmare trying to scan things over the side of my bed. That's why I left retail, because I wanted to fucking kill myself.
No. He's got so I became somewhat of a local celebrity because I went to the nearest water park for my stepson's birthday, and the dude working there, he sat there and looks at me and goes, "You look awfully familiar." I was like, "Oh, do I?" I was like, "I don't know." He's like, "Oh yeah, that's right. You're the Walmart guy." I was like, "Yeah, that's exactly what I want to be known as in life, is the Walmart guy."
Well, I was kind of known in the little local area for the shop I worked in by among certain people, because they'd come in every day and buy shit. And I'd be there looking, depending on how far into the shift I was, either somewhat cheerful or very grumpy. And it got to the point where I'd be walking there in the morning, and I'd see a bus go past me and think, if I jumped in front of that bus, I wouldn't have to go in today.
Yeah.
So at that point, I decided to leave.
Yeah, that guy was not the only one who had recognized me whenever I was not at Walmart. There was at least 4 or 5 different people who sit there and say, "Hey, aren't you the Walmart guy?"
Oh, that's encouraging.
Every time I heard it, in my head, I was like, "Oh, fuck my life. But I answered them and said, "Yeah, I work at Walmart." And they're like, "Yeah, you checked me out before. You're so funny." I'm like, awesome. That's still exactly what I want to be known for, is being the Walmart guy.
It's just what you need for your self-esteem, really, isn't it? Just
right?
Yeah. It's
like
work at Walmart.
It's like the one clip that's ever gonna go viral is a clip about me, is a clip of me doing something or other, and people say, "Oh yeah, I knew the guy. He used to, he checked me out once at Walmart." I'm like, "Oh great, yes, this is great. I love it."
I recognize that guy's voice. He's at Walmart.
He's the Walmart guy.
Here's the thing, though. Star Wars, bringing it back.
Of course, we have to.
As I keep bringing up the Republic Commando series, there is an aspect of it that I haven't got to yet, which is the Mandalorian culture, which was largely invented by Karen Traviss, the author of that series. There is a language and a lot of sort of somewhat splintered communities online of people who are very into the Mandalorian culture. There is a Discord server dedicated to learning the language. And there's also the Mando Mercs costume group, although they have a somewhat divided opinion on them among other Mandalorian communities. They're a bit picky about what they'll allow in.
I don't. My biggest thing is, so is there an actual guide on how to speak Mandalorian?
Well,
because from all the movies and stuff that I've seen, the 2 biggest ones that had, anything to do with Mandalorian, of course, was with Boba Fett. He spoke English, so it's
as it would be referred to in universe, he spoke Galactic Basic.
Galactic Basic, there you go.
In fact, in the storyline, he doesn't properly speak the Mando'ar, or the language of the Mandalorians.
No. I think
because
he has like one line, and the one line he says it in English.
Well, his dad died, didn't he? So he didn't really have time to learn it.
Oh. Well, there you go then.
However, I have here the Mando'ar dictionary.
And is this published by?
It was originally published by Karen Travis, the author, and it's been updated by fans and stuff since.
Okay.
For example, let me just check I'm pronouncing this right, because it's supposed to be a primarily spoken language, and I've almost only ever seen it written. Also, I'm dyslexic, so yay!
Oh, okay, this is going to be even more interesting.
Yeah. This is a post I put on Twitter when I saw that they're doing the Mandalorian series. The post I said was, "This could be awesome. This could also be a monumental fuck-up that'll drive Star Wars into the ground permanently." And then I said, "Ki nu jer kadir shamando ade," which translates as "Don't mess with Mandalorians."
Lordy, that's like because my biggest thing is, because I haven't read the books, which aggravates me now, is like there's so much that people keep that who are true diehard Star Wars fans. Like, I'm a fan of this Star Wars. They will sit there and say, "Oh, well, this and this is this," and I'm like completely and utterly lost. Like, for instance, when you brought up Mandalorian, and I'm just like, they actually have a language that you can learn.
Yeah, and so Discord you can join.
And so whenever this stuff happens, like for instance, if you take it to Star Trek, Star Trek has Klingon. And in the series, there are actually Klingons who speak Klingon, and so there's an actual basis that, okay, well, here they are speaking Klingon. Okay, so we know that this is an actual language that you can learn, because somebody out there probably will have a way to do it. But then you have Star Wars.
Klingon weddings.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's so many things that have to do with Klingon but the thing is, there's a basis for it in the series.
Yep.
And then you come across Star Wars, and if all you've ever seen is the movies, you're just
you have no fucking idea what's going on.
You're like, what the fuck is this? What is this? It's like, none of this was in the movies. Yeah. It's like, well, it's because it's in the books. No.
Well, there is a little bit in the Rebels series with that one Mandalorian woman whose armor is awful and covers almost none of her body.
Oh, that's always great.
But she speaks the language once or twice in the series, I think. I haven't actually watched all of it. But apparently she speaks the language to like a Mandalorian port controller at some point.
Yeah, I don't know. It just was like, yay, this is something else I don't know. And so I always hate walking into conversations. Like, I'll be there, and the conversation's going good, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere,
you just
something that I have no clue. So I just sat there quietly, and I'm just like, okay, I have no idea what's going on, but okay.
Were you in that live stream like a month or so ago when me and Cirrus were arguing about cortosis ore?
No.
No, there was a live stream discussing Star Wars, and I appeared with an awful microphone sounding like I was a fucking malfunctioning battle droid.
You actually, I actually may have been there. I do remember you and Sarah talking about.
I was there arguing with Cirrus about whether the Mandalorian armor was made up of cortosis ore or a separate metal.
Yeah, I was there for that one. And I'm just the entire time just like,
I'm sure it's not cortosis. I looked it up. No, it's not. It's Mandalorian iron.
Yeah, and I'm over here as y'all are going back and forth in this. So they're saying, you know, in my head, pretty much just like, lightsabers are pretty colors because I know nothing about the subject, so I might as well just be ignorant about everything that y'all are talking about, and that's the kind of level I'm at. Is because y'all are like, no, because this iron ore is blah 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 blah, while this one is yada yada yada, and I'm just like, they have robots.
Yeah, they got good stuff.
Yeah, and it's just like my so my stepson and my wife's brother, who they're roughly around the same age. They were talking about car things because they're big into cars. They love cars. They play the racing games and, you know, things like Forza Horizon and things like that. And they're over here talking about all these things, and I just sit there, and once there's a quiet moment, which is very rare between the two of them, I pipe in and say things like muffler, like stick shift, window.
I know what I'm talking about.
I know what I'm talking about. I know the language. Or I would just be like camshaft, and so both of them just kind of laugh and like, yes, camshaft. I'm like, yeah.
Like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm like, I know the word's good.
Yeah, that's the problem with the expanded universe. It is vast, and now there's two of them.
Yes, and the one thing I cannot, for the life of me, stand is when you have people who are the die-hard fans that take the time to learn it, and then whenever someone's just like, you know, oh yeah, I like Star Wars, and they're like, oh, well, did you read this one word, this one obscure book, in this one obscure book out of nowhere? And it's like, because that was amazing. It's like, yeah, I said I like it. I didn't say that I dry hump the pillows for this. I don't dry hump the books.
Well,
and so it's like, you're not a true fan.
I know exactly what you mean there. And on that note, have you read the Republic Commando books? Because if not, go fuck yourself.
Not go fuck yourself. Like, oh yeah, I can't stand those either. But then here I am. Anytime someone brings up Batman, I'm like, oh, have you read
years of comics?
Yeah. Like, that is one subject that I've yet to meet someone who knows at least the bare minimum, like I do.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be up with you on that, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is there are people who know way more than me about Batman. I love it, but there are people who know way more because these are the type of people who they put themselves into it.
Yep.
You know, they take the time to actually go through it. And by all means, if you like doing that, go ahead and do it. And by all means, I will see, you know, I would sit there, and if anybody says, oh, do you know this one thing about Batman? I'm like, turn to this guy because he knows more. But I'm never the type of person to actually flaunt even the small amount of knowledge I do know. I sit there and say that I've yet to meet, as far as layman people go, who know more about Batman than I do.
I try not to be a dick about it if I do find that someone is not as sort of into something as I am. But I it's something I'm really into, and it's something I'm passionate about. So I do try to just kind of just nudge them a little bit. Like, by the way, these Republic Commando books, they're really good, and I recommend you read them. And that's not just an example. That is a recommendation. I recommend you read them sort of right now. Yeah,
I would if I had the money to go and buy them. But fuck you, I'm poor.
Unfortunately, there aren't audiobooks. Unfortunately, there aren't audiobooks. I checked.
Yeah. Like I said, the biggest issue here is that I'm poor, so Go fuck yourself. But no, like for instance, I sit there and tell people, I ask people because they sit there and go, they take this whenever I sit there and say that I haven't met someone who's known more than I do. Which I know there are people out there who do, but I just haven't personally met them yet. And so somebody, actually, no, I take that back. Now I have. I think Secular may know more than I do about Batman.
Interesting.
Yeah.
See, I know a little bit, but not a huge amount because I don't get super into the DC comics because I find that a lot of the characters are rather overpowered and they kind of take me out of the story. Batman is one of the most interesting ones to me.
Yeah. And the reason why he is so interesting is, except for now, I think that with the new 52 lineup that they had, they try to make his intellect a superpower. And it's like, no, go fuck yourself.
Would you join me in saying that Batfleck was a fucking disaster?
So, the only thing that could be ever a saving grace for Ben Affleck is if this is Batman way, like, closer to, how can I put it? Closer to, say, year one or not year one, the Dark Knight storyline, where Batman's gotten older and whatnot. That is the only way Affleck's Batman will work, but it doesn't work in as far as between the Batman versus Superman, because this is when Clark is still pretty young, and you know, whenever the two meet, when the two meet, they're both young. So, in the actual storyline, whereas in this one, Ben Affleck is kind of like an old. I mean, as far as playing Batman, it's perfect. It's just this was not the right story to have Affleck as Batman. This is not the right storyline. Because
I'm not a fan of how he plays it personally, but carry on.
Well, the way he plays it is kind of good. I mean, but with someone who likes Batman so much, it's hard to find someone that is the proper amount of billionaire playboy esque attitude.
It's the same problem as recasting James Bond, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the same thing about the James Bond. It's like it's hard to find the perfect playboy type of thing, and then at the same time have the dark broodingness of Batman. It's hard to find someone like that, but he did great. Well, like whenever it comes to the billionaire playboy, because of the entire, like whenever he meets Clark for the first time and they're chit chatting about it, and he sits there and says, he goes, whenever he goes, wait, he's like, you work for the Daily Planet? Is that the one I own, or is it the other one? You know, I wish there was, So there's and then like whenever he's at whenever he goes to get the information out of Lex Luthor's computer, and he sits there and he's like kind of summarized, like, had a little too much wine to drink. Where's the bathroom at? You know, perfect. This is perfect behavior of a billionaire playboy. And then he does have some good broodingness. Like, for instance, whenever he sits there and meets up with Superman for the first time, and his sister goes, he's like, can I ask you, do you bleed? And this broodiness about it, whenever once Superman leaves and he says, well, you're going to, or something like that. The broodiness of it is perfect.
That's there a bit.
Yes, there's only bits and pieces of it. I yet have found someone who can do both characters perfectly.
Here's a thing from the chat. Spooky Bedhair says, I have a Star Wars coffee mug that reacts to heat. Lightsabers are on when hot, off when cold. And Bradley says, wow, Spooky, that sounds like handheld cancer.
Actually, I have a Batman coffee changing mug. Whenever it's cold, everything's black and you can't see anything but his eyes and the outline of his of the cowl. And whenever it's hot, you can see his actual face, his chest and his arms, where he has in kind of a fighting stance.
Well, here's the thing with the DC universe. My preferred version of it is the animated series, the Justice League series. Because to me that was excellent. And my favorite character in it, once they started not just having the original few ones, Flash, Wonder Woman, Batman, Superman, and Martian Manhunter, and Green Lantern. Once they got past having just those, and they had the sort of extended roster of superheroes.
Right.
My favorite character was the Question.
The Question.
Guy with no face, or he has a mask that makes him look like he has no face. Wears a trench coat and a fedora. He looks like a classic noir detective.
That sounds like a ripoff of Rorschach from Watchmen.
Rorschach was based on the Question.
Oh, okay. So it's actually the opposite way around.
Yeah. Here's a little thing I did a bit of research into this because the guy, I can't remember his name, the guy who did Watchmen, the comic, the graphic novel / comics, he originally the DC bought another comics company and incorporated their characters into the DC universe, including the Question. And the guy who did Watchmen wanted to use those characters for something else which was going to be much darker. And DC was like, "No, we ain't gonna do that." And he's like, "All right, well, I'll make similar characters and do it anyway."
Right.
And that's how we got Rorschach. Okay. But the Question in that series, he's like a conspiracy theorist nutjob, but he's he's great fun. He's a really troubled character, and I like him.
That sounds still like Rorschach. It sounds like Rorschach still, even when you said that, because it's just like he took everything about the Question. He's like, we're gonna copy everything except for his mask is gonna change shapes due to the.
He's gonna have a Rorschach test on his mask, whereas this guy just doesn't have a face.
Yeah. So
the thing with the Question is, in the series, he does he digs up this thing about the Superman killing Lex Luthor as president. And he goes on like a whole conspiracy theory thing about this, which turns up to be very accurate. But everyone else thinks he's a bit of a nut job because, like, Supergirl goes into his like quarters on the Watchtower, and he's got all the walls are just covered in conspiracy theories, and she's going around the place just looking, and she goes, I didn't know the Girl Scouts were responsible for the crop circle phenomenon. He's there like, there are few who do. That's why he's my favorite character.
one of my favorite Justice Leagues happens to be the Doom movie / the Doom comic series. Where the Justice League gets attacked, and this is before they actually started branching out. This is probably one of the reasons why they started branching out. And so they go under attack, and everyone starts. Everyone, like for instance, magnesium is introduced into the bloodstream of Martian Manhunter. And he, of course, gets set ablaze. Well, with magnesium,
issues.
Now
it causes him some issues. Yep.
Yeah, and of course, with the magnesium pumping through his veins, he is forever just constantly burning. Nothing can put him out. He even jumps into the water to try to get put out, but it won't because his bloodstream and his sweat glands and everything, the magnesium just keeps constantly pushing out. Cheetah goes to attack Wonder Woman and introduce she's her vision starts getting kind of blurry, and then all of a sudden she sees multiple cheetahs everywhere. Superman gets a kryptonite bullet to the heart. The Flash gets a bomb attached to his wrist that if he were to slow down, that bomb will go off.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have Green Lantern, who, of course, the best way to stop the Green Lantern is introduce fear into his system, and
Mm-hmm.
so he you bring up the greatest fear in him, and he is neutralized. You
Mm-hmm.
can't do, he won't be able to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
So all these stuff starts happening to all of them, and Batman gets buried alive. So he takes the keys out of his pocket and he starts punching. But not only did he get buried alive, he got buried alive in his father's casket.
Okay.
So he turns around
Is his
after,
father still there?
yeah,
Oh dear.
yeah. So he wakes once he wakes up and realizes what's happened. He turns
Mm-hmm.
around, he digs the keys out of his pocket, puts the keys in between his fingers, and then just starts punching at the casket until he
He's kill
finally,
billing it.
huh?
He's kill billing it.
Yeah, pretty much. He's over here just getting himself using the keys to dig through the wood to get him out
Mm-hmm.
of the casket. And then he once he finally does that, he then crawls, of course, through the 6 feet of dirt
Yeah.
and finally comes up the other side, goes to the Batcave, and then of course gets on his uniform and starts to work on what's happening with everyone. Once he gets up to speed, he tells them all what to do to neutralize everything. And they're like, "How do you know this?" He goes, "Because these were my plans."
Mm-hmm.
And so he then they're wanting to figure out why he has all this information,
Yeah.
why he's doing this, and but they don't have the time to. They have to sit there and stop it. Well, come to find out in the movie, what ends up happening, um, he sits there and says, he's like, what pretty much is happening is Randall Savage gets together the Legion of Doom, and he has them all. He has Mirror Master break into the Batcave by getting into the mirror of the Batmobile. And then once the Batmobile is at the Batcave, he gets out and downloads all the files onto a zip drive and then walks out. And
Mm.
because he was already in there, it doesn't set off the alarms for Batcave. And so he then leaves. And everyone starts doing the stuff. And come to find out, Randall Savage, what he's trying to do is have a solar flare reach out to the Earth, and it's going to scorch half the Earth, and the other half will be able to do nothing but bow down to him, pretty much. And so they get once everyone's finally caught up to speed and everyone's back in good health and whatnot, they go to Watchtower, and Superman's over here trying to think of a way to to stop it, and he goes, maybe I can move the Earth out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Batman sits there and says, he goes, even if I had all the time in the world, I could not explain how that won't work. And I cannot explain all the ways that won't work. And then he says, so then what eventually ends up happening is the Green Lantern Corps come and they help make a shield around the Earth, and they end up doing it whatever. So once the threat is neutralized and everything's good to go, they're all sitting down trying to figure out what to do about Batman and his contingency plans.
Mm-hmm.
And so he says, like, someone's like, I believe Batman, has the right to be able to speak on his behalf on why he has that. And so everyone's waiting in anticipation.
I think I've seen this scene on the YouTube somewhere at some point.
Yeah. And he saying goes, my actions don't need defending. And the Flash is like, oh, come on. He's like, look, if y'all can't understand why we need such, plans, in case one of us go rogue, He's like, then I don't want to even be a part of this Justice League.
Mm-hmm.
And so he walks out like a fucking boss.
Yeah.
And he's over at the transporter to transport him back to Earth when Superman comes up to him and says, he goes, so all these were your plans? He goes, yep. And he's like, don't try to stop me. He's like, I'm not. He's like, so I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that burying you alive was not part of your plan. He goes, no, I can only deduce that had to be Savage's plan. He goes, are you so arrogant to not think that we need a plan for you, or that a plan needs to be done in case you go rogue, type of thing?
Mm-hmm.
And in the comic versus the movie, he says a different thing. So in the movie, he says, I do. It's called the Justice League. And
that's the one I've seen, yeah.
Yeah. And so in that scene, Superman says, that's all I need to know. Hands him a box, and it's a lead box that has the kryptonite bullet. He says that if anything were to happen to me, I want you to be the one to stop me. And then in the comics, though, what he says is, I do. And he stands next to me in red and green, talking about Robin, which makes more sense, because if you are Batman, knowing as much martial arts as you do, because you've mastered several different forms, knowing all the information you do, and knowing that you stand toe to toe with gods and been able to come out on top, or at least hold your own ground, you're going to want to train someone to be able to take you down. And who better to take you down than the one who stands next to you every night? So it makes more sense that it is Robin that he's referring to, and not exactly the Justice League. Now, granted, the Justice League could probably lend a hand, but depending on the writer and depending on the storyline, Batman could probably easily overpower them as well. Which is why I always find it funny whenever people go into a big, humongous rant about, no, that would never happen in real life. It's like, well, for starters, none of this is going to happen in real life, because there's no other.
There aren't superpowered.
There are no Kryptonians and stuff. I was like, but on second, it all just goes by the writer. Like, for instance, if Batman is in a Wonder Woman comic and he has to fight her, Wonder Woman's going to come out on top because it's her fucking comic. And vice versa for Batman. If Wonder Woman comes to Batman's comic, Batman's going to annihilate her because it's his comic. And it also depends on the storyline. If the storyline can only progress because one of them needs to be the victor, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so I don't ever engage in these type of conversations until someone tries to bring up, oh, well, if this was a real fight, that would never happen. I'd be like, okay, it's time to actually tell you what's going on. But so
I tend to find as the power levels of whatever's going on increase, my level of interest decreases.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, Superman is pretty boring for me because he's massively overpowered in almost all situations. Wonder Woman is more interesting, but still a bit much. Yeah. Batman is excellent because he's a normal human. In terms of that, he is an exceptional human if you compare him to other humans. He's essentially every Olympic athlete combined in terms of his abilities, and he's also a genius in many different fields. But he is the best that humanity can offer. In terms of his abilities, but he's standing up against these superpowered beings, and also he's got problems. So he's an interesting character to me.
Yeah, because his problems are relatable problems. Like, I mean, when's the time that you've ever where you've had a complete stranger sit down and said, "Oh man, my life just so sucks because my home planet was destroyed by an asteroid, and I got sent here as a baby and had to all the quaint human things that y'all go through.
Yeah.
On a basis.
Batman is a street criminal killed my parents.
Yeah, which then gives him a sense of justice that he follows strictly to a T.
Mm-hmm.
And sure, not a lot of us can understand the billionaire lifestyle type part of his life, but everyone knows that they have a daily struggle when it or not. It may not even be a daily; it could be a weekly, a monthly, or whatever. But we always have a struggle with the side of us that wants to go too far, that wants to push ourselves over the edge, especially whenever you get into situations where it seems like going that far is the only solution. And it doesn't have to be as far as killing, like for Batman. It could be something like people wanting to, like, for instance, around here, around where I'm at, one of the biggest things is when you see, these people who don't work a day in their life because they, sell dope or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That you have this daily struggle where
it's something that you can relate to as a human. As human being, or just as someone in society. You can just see these are problems that actually exist, and here is a fantasy character dealing with them in a way that we can't.
Yeah, and then
not just that, it's a character who has the emotional issues that would come with that.
Yes, and so having that is great. And then if they focus on Superman in an aspect that is great, like, for instance, that's more interesting because he is such an overpowerful character. Focus on the parts of him where he has to limit his control, because otherwise he would kill people.
Focus on
that would be
the aspects that are a problem for him.
Yeah, and not just, I'm going to fly around. Oh, here, let me go hit this guy. But no, and then, if you're going to have that comic, sit there and be like, have him eternally struggling because he's like, if I hit him too hard, he's going to die. Whereas if I hit him too light...
If I hit him too hard, he's going to die and knock over that building over there.
Yeah. And so have him struggling with trying to keep his power in check.
I'm going to bring this up again. Republic Commando novels.
Mm-hmm.
The Jedi in the Republic Commando novels there's two Jedi characters that feature in them quite prominently. One of them is very torn about his abilities because one of a Jedi's major abilities is mind influence. And a line from the book is, none of these people around me understand what I'm capable of, and if they did, they would fear me and run from me.
Yeah.
Because he can essentially enter their minds at will. You can't go in and read their specific thoughts, but he can read their emotional responses, and he can adjust their emotional responses to suit what he wants them to do.
Yeah. And the thing is this should be something that everyone within the Superman fandom should sit there and focus on, or want the comic writers to focus on, because it's something that is interesting. I mean, that's what made Batman versus Superman so interesting, was because you have Batman who's looking at Superman as this menace who can kill people just by the actions he takes on a normal basis, like whenever in the movies, whenever he's
killed 15 people.
Yeah. But in the movie, the scenario that they take is whenever from Superman Returns, whenever he's fighting the Man of Steel, when he's fighting Zod, and you're sitting there and Bruce Wayne is in Metropolis and he saves this girl from being crushed, and he goes, "Where's your parents? Where's your mom, your dad?" And she points up to a part of this building that had been completely torn down because of Superman and Zod fighting. And he sits there and looks up to the sky at Superman, and he's like, he has to be stopped because he is killing people with the actions he takes. So
yeah, that's an actual interesting thing that they could do with it.
Yeah, and that's what Batman versus Superman did go on a route through. And if the Superman comics kind of took the same exact route, it would be way better.
A good example with another character would be, well, now I'm trying to say it, it's gone from my head. Give me a sec. Another character that's not empowered would be, well, let's look at Star Wars again as an example. Anakin Skywalker constantly trying to control his emotional state in order to fit in with the Jedi Order.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. They just like, because the power that he can tap into whenever he goes through the rage is really amazingly overly powerful, and he has to struggle with not doing that. And then he's sitting there and he's doing everything in his power not to. And then here comes the Return of the Sith, when when all this stuff that keeps getting piled up upon him finally cracks him.
Yeah, and it's piled up upon him by absolutely everyone in his life. It's piled upon him by Obi-Wan, constantly telling him that he's going too far or he's doing something wrong, and that you're not.
And then you have Mace Windu, who's over here telling him that it's not
piled upon him by Mace Windu and the rest of the Jedi Council, saying that you're doing it wrong. You shouldn't have been trained in the first place. He goes to Yoda. He goes to Yoda for advice, and Yoda says you have to let go of your attachment to everything, and that's the only thing keeping him going is this illicit love affair that he's involved in.
Yeah, and then it's even getting piled up on him because of Padme. Padme is over here also
on him as well, trying to do her political things.
Yeah, and so all of this is piled up on him, and then finally, the one person who tells him it's okay, be yourself, do this that you want to do, is the one man who is doing it for the wrong reasons, but to him, it's not. It's like, this is like, oh, I can do this. Oh, I'm going to now, because I now have someone who's going to teach me how to be, the best I can, or to do whatever it is that I want to do. And so it then eventually turns to the dark side.
Yeah, it's the thing with Anakin is it's a tragedy. It's a tragic story. Everything just piled up on him over time and turned him away from the things that he wanted to be, and that his ambition to become a Jedi was turned against him by Palpatine.
Yeah.
And right at the end there, the moment when he decides to go and kill Mace Windu.
Not only
before that's been building for years, because the only person who he felt safe talking to was Palpatine. Because the guy made himself like a friendly uncle kind of character.
Yeah.
He presented himself as this friendly person who just wanted him to become everything he could be and use his abilities for good. Even though that wasn't what he was actually doing, that's what he presented himself as. Yeah. And then finally he thinks, wait a minute, this guy's the Sith Lord. If I tell Mace Windu that this guy is the Sith Lord, maybe I can, salvage my Jedi, my progression through the Jedi Order. And he goes and tells the guy, and he's very conflicted about this decision. And Mace Windu basically says, good, we know who this is. Now go fuck yourself.
Yeah. And then, and freaking Palpatine was so brilliant with it, because he's over here telling him stories of these Sith Lords that were brilliant men, and who were, in a sense, not exactly the bad guy, but at the same time was. And
I think Star Wars is a much more complex story than people think it is.
Oh yeah, and people are just like, because they want to try to put it down to the very, very bare minimum. It's like you can't with Star Wars. Star Wars, there's too much complexity that's going on that you can watch the movie and find new things that you missed every time you watch it.
Good. Another aspect of that is Mace Windu, after going off to kill Palpatine. You see that is an aspect of Hayden Christensen presenting the emotional conflict within Anakin Skywalker in a very compelling way. He sits there in the council chamber, just mulling this over, and you see the change in his face as he goes from, I don't know if what I've done is right, to that guy's going to go and kill my only hope at saving Padme.
Yeah. And then whenever, and then you can see it again whenever he actually becomes Darth Vader and whatnot. And, you can see the hatred he has for himself whenever, he sits there and he's like, he's pretty much like, you told me I could bring her back. And he's like, you've already killed her. You've done too much damage. And you can see the hatred in him as he sits there and does the whole entire no part, but which it sounds funny, but that's exactly what happens because it's James Earl Jones' voice just going no.
Present that in a compelling way, given that you've got this character who now doesn't have facial expressions.
And so he does it because as he's sitting there doing the no, like he's controlling the room with just the sheer anger and the force, just controlling, like breaking shit with the force as he's saying no, and it's like you can see the hatred he has in him for himself at that point in time.
Here's a little expanded universe thing for you. The tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise that Palpatine alludes to when he's talking to Anakin in the Bubble Opera. The tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise is not quite as old a Sith legend as he makes out.
Yeah, I remember you saying something like this.
Darth Plagueis was his Sith master, and he killed the guy probably a few months before that conversation.
And why did he kill him?
Betrayal is the way of the Sith.
Yeah.
He felt stifled by Plagueis's insistence on the way he wanted to do things. And he decided, no, I want to be the Sith Lord that enacts this centuries-old plan to take over.
Yeah.
I'm going to... The pieces are in motion. We have this set up ready to do. Only thing in my way now is Darth Plagueis.
Yeah, and if you look at it, it actually is kind of the way of the Sith, because then whenever Darth Vader, at the end of Episode 3, kills Palpatine. Technically, if you think about it, the fact that it was the love of his son that made him do it, his son killed him.
You see it with Count Dooku as well. Just in the moment on Grievous's ship, when Anakin cuts his hands off, and Palpatine's there going, "Good, Anakin, good. Kill him. Yeah. Kill him now."
Yeah.
And it mentions in the novelization of that the last thought that goes through Dooku's head as it's removed from his body is betrayal is the way of the Sith.
Nice. Yeah, it's perfect.
And he just looks around at Palpatine like, oh, shit.
Right?
Yeah,
and the thing is...
That wasn't the plan that they discussed before that.
And the funny thing is, now that you bring that up, it seems like the only thing that's going to kill, that will be able to kill Snook is Crybaby. I don't remember his real name.
Which one?
Ren. Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren is
yeah.
probably going to be the one who has to kill Snook because he will betray him, and betrayal is the way of the Sith.
Well, the thing with that is they're not technically Sith.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole separate thing that they're trying to do with it, which is a bit of a mess. And as well as that, Mr. Crybaby, he's the most interesting character in the new films. He's not very good in a lot of ways. There's things wrong with him in consistency and tone, but he's the most interesting character to me because he's conflicted.
Yeah. One of the most interesting things that I saw or heard about was like spoilers for anyone who didn't see the first one. Mm-hmm. Which, if you haven't seen it by now, just go fuck yourself. But anyways, the first one was whenever Solo was trying to, Han Solo was trying to tell Kylo Ren, come on, let's go home, type of thing. He sits there and goes, I need your help, and goes, anything for you. That whole entire struggle.
Yeah.
The lights. The most interesting about this is like there are some people who are trying to theorize that Han was trying to get him to kill him, and that Ren was trying to fight against killing his father. And I'm like, that part just kind of, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a bit silly.
Yeah, it is, and
it doesn't fit. I mean,
don't get me wrong. Yeah, yeah. And don't get me wrong. It is a very interesting idea, but like you said, it just doesn't fit because you have Han Solo, who desperately wants his son to just come back, to just be back with him and his mother, and then you have Kylo Ren, who wants everything in his power to kill his father because he feels like this is the only way he'll be able to finally be the Sith Lord that he has been aspiring to be. Like,
yeah, he's been aspiring to become Darth Vader, essentially.
Yeah, and so he figures that this is the best and only way that he can get this accomplished, and so it would make sense for him to be trying not to kill his dad, while his dad's trying to get him to kill him.
Well, that's kind of why in my plot outline that I came up with for salvaging these films, Han Solo is not Kylo Ren's father. They are unrelated, and Kylo Ren is Rey's brother in my little plot outline because that gives a family connection similar to the theme of the original one without cocking up a load of the original characters in the process.
Wow. But the thing is with that is the fact that since the Force flows through everything, including everyone, just only a select few people can tap into it. Rey being a standalone person within the Force wielders, as far as Jedi and Sith go, it's not at all far-fetched to have her being just someone who can control the Force.
Yeah. Because they turn up all over the place anyway. That's how the Jedi Order in the time of the previous Republic got its members. Because they didn't really do the sex with each other because of their outlook on things.
Yeah. So you have people, Jedi popping up out of nowhere, in which case you'll also, because the Force itself is kind of neutral. It's the individual who makes it either good or bad.
In some ways, yeah.
Yeah, and so you'll have people who will become evil because the power from the Force causes them to be like, oh, well, I can do whatever with this.
Yeah.
Or whatever, or even have that moment where they're not exactly a bad guy, but they figure doing it the bad way will get the results that they need done. So, like, kind of like how Anakin did at the very beginning, was he thought that if he turned to be a Sith, that he could save Padme,
Yep.
and then ends up killing her instead.
He
then
did it for good reasons, or what he thought at the time were good reasons, but it turned him to evil.
Mm-hmm. And so...
And it turned him to evil because of the self-hatred, because of what he did.
To her.
To her, and to himself, and to the galaxy.
Yeah. And so, and I find it amazing how technically he did still bring order to the Force due to the fact that
it's not in the way that everyone wanted. It's not in the way that they wanted.
Yeah, it was nowhere in the way they wanted at all. But because he did kill off just about every Jedi, and then here comes his son, he did bring balance back to the Force. And it's just, like you said, just not the way that they envisioned it. Their idea of bringing back balance to the Force was having it tipped in the Jedi's favor, which is, if you think about it, not bringing balance.
Very balanced, really.
Yeah.
That's. I'm going to bring him up once more. We should probably wrap up at some point soon, but
yeah,
I'm going to bring him up again. One of the reasons I like the Republic Commando books particularly is because they ignore this whole Jedi-Sith dichotomy almost entirely. Because the Mandalorians are an entirely different culture who have their own conflicts with both Jedi and Sith. And they're kind of one of the main focus of this book series. The Jedi don't like them because they've fought against the Jedi with the Sith historically. And a lot of other cultures don't like them because they're basically nomadic mercenaries.
Right.
But it gives an entirely outside perspective on the Jedi way of looking at things. And it's very interesting to perceive from the perspective of someone who does not have access to the abilities granted by the control of the Force, and doesn't have any sort of understanding from an internal view, as the audience does, of the Jedi's code or how they operate. A lot of people just see the Jedi as this weird order of monks that are kind of they've got these magic powers and they're protectors of the Republic, so they're pretty nice. But a lot of people who know a bit more about it see them as a dangerous order of ancient, unelected, uncontrollable people who have a power that no one else understands, great political influence because of their links to the Republic, and they fear them and they're very angry with them because of this. So it's an interesting outside perspective on this whole affair.
Right. That is very interesting. But back to the original point that I was making, back in suss it back out. So since the Force runs through everyone, it's perfectly fine, but the bad thing about what they've done is that because she has this obsession of figuring out where her parents are, and it leaves this whole entire unanswered question to the viewers. It makes you think that maybe her parents are, could be Han and so-and-so's daughter, but then Han would have recognized her.
You'd think so. Or maybe she's descended from Obi-Wan or something.
Yeah, or she could even be somehow related directly to Luke, but Luke's not wanting to...
Or one of the other thousands of Jedi that were floating around the galaxy.
Exactly. And so you have to, you're speculating like maybe she's part of the Jedi by means of her parents, but then it's like why did you have to do that? Because now you have to answer this question that, as far as I know,
even need to do
has yet to be answered.
No, you didn't even need to do that. You could have just had, here is a character.
Here's a character that can wield the Force due to the fact that that she is the one that's been able to tap into that ability. But They fucked it up.
I mean, they could have gone with a family connection if they'd done it in an interesting way, but they haven't.
No, as far as I know, it has gone completely and utterly unanswered.
Well,
Casey Atheist said before we end it, because I think that's exactly what you're about to do. Casey Atheist said episode 9. Yeah.
Well, in my little plot outline, that I've come up with, Rey is a character who is a former slave, along with her brother, who I've put Kylo Ren as being her brother rather than in any relation to Han Solo. And I think that's just better because it allows new characters to come in who just aren't linked to the original characters and can make their own stories.
Yeah. And the thing is,
and you can have the old characters, pass the torch to these new ones. You can have, like in my little outline, you have the first one, it's about Luke. The second one, it's about Luke passing on the responsibility of dealing with this to Rey. And then the third one, which I haven't come up with a plot outline for, would be how that is dealt with and how it's concluded with these new characters having to come up with a solution without the help of the older ones.
Yeah. Itchy Balls says, "What is Star Wars about? It's space tyranny."
Yes, it's like a big tragedy, but big fantasy tragedy, but in space.
Yeah, it is. Like I said, it's space tyranny. That's pretty much all it is. It's all about space tyranny. The bad guy is overtaking the entire space.
And all that space, they're way up in there. Way up in your butt, Morty. All right, we should probably wrap this up.
Yeah.
So, been great chatting with you. Anybody who's just come in, the first sort of 20 minutes of this stream, if you want to rewatch it, is me going through a plot outline I've come up with for how the two new Star Wars sequels of the main big trilogy, whatever it is that they're trying to do, could have been salvaged to fit with the original expanded universe, the real expanded universe, and how it could all fit together nicely, and Disney fucked it, essentially. And then I've been here chatting with Mr. Frustrated about our thoughts on that, other fictional things that are related and unrelated, and we went off on a bit of a tangent about Batman for a while.
Yes. And Spooky Bedhead, how dare you? How dare you say it's the poor man's Star Trek? Like, oh my God. Like, you know what? Go to your room, Spooky. Go to your
room and put your bed air back in your bed.
Exactly.
Well, thanks for coming, Mr. Frustrated. And thanks for everyone in the chat dropping in and listening. Hopefully I'll do a few more of these live streams. I did this as a sort of tongue-in-cheek challenge to Master Apologist to drop in and debate me on Star Wars, which I knew he wouldn't.
You actually did that on Twitter?
I did that on Twitter, yeah.
Nice. Love it.
He seems to have deleted his Twitter now, though.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, I think so. When I tried to find him to tag him, it just said this account does not exist. I was like, oh shit.
Oh wow. That is crazy.
Yeah, he's a bit of an idiot.
Yeah, he is.
Anyway, thanks for coming, everyone, and that'll do for now.